Hello and welcome to Nick V Uncensored. Today we've got Mark Z and we're going to be discussing the currency revaluation update, what the currency revaluation actually means for the currencies that have been heavily manipulated by the Federal Reserve. I was going to say the FDA, but the Federal Reserve, and we're going to compare it to an example that was with another currency called the Kuwaiti dinar that was revalued in 1991. What happened there? Why it revalued? And we're going to compare it to the currency revaluations that we're waiting for to happen in the coming months, if not maybe a couple of years. Mark Z, thank you so much for joining me. How are you, and what have you been up to?
I've been great. It's good to be here with you, Nick, and the whole crew. Looking forward to talking about Kuwait and the similarities. And we've got a number of other examples throughout history where currencies have been manipulated as well. It gives bankers a golden opportunity to create some wealth.
Absolutely. Now, I want to make this really simple for the newbies, because we've got new people that are watching us, and I want you to explain this like to a 12-year-old. Okay, so just to make it really, really simple. So, first of all, when we talk about the revaluation of currencies, or the RV, which is short for revaluation, what is it exactly? Why would their currencies revalue? Why would the governments do that?
Probably going to be easier to do to back up and have like just a little fundamental lesson on what money is. Trade, originally it would have started, maybe you're in your cave and you got a buddy over on the next hill in their cave, and you have managed to get a couple of chickens, and he's managed to get a couple of goats, and you want a goat and you got chickens, so you would trade chickens, get his goats. That's like the basic of trade, or the basic economic or currency. Your currency would be chickens, his would be goats. Your problem is what happens when you add a third, fourth, fifth, sixth person. They're over in their cave. Somebody else has, I don't know, maybe some doves, maybe some really cool arrowheads. But what happens if the first person wants an arrowhead? So he goes to the arrowhead guy and he's got a chicken, and the arrowhead guy's, yeah, I really don't want a chicken. I want a goat. I want a pigeon. I want a dove. I want something else. And so now the guy that wants to trade or wants to get those has got to go to somebody else to find it. It's a back and forth. Money was created. It was a measure of value. It was more efficient. So you would use the money to go to the person. They could then turn around and use that money to go and buy what they wanted. So it took out one of the steps. So did that make sense to you? In other words, if I want an arrowhead, I go to the arrowhead guy, but he doesn't want my chickens because he wants a goat. But if we have a store of value like gold or seashells back in the day, or even flower bulbs at one time, what's considered valuable, then I can trade that to pick up those arrowheads. That guy can then turn around and go to the goat guy with his currency or his money, what represents that value. That's the basics of that one. I know it seems odd that I'm starting there.
So you're basically saying that every country has a reason. So every country has their own reason and their own resources that reflect what their purchasing power is what makes their currency strong or what it makes it weak. For an example, my country might grow gold, and you want to buy gold from me, but I don't have diamonds here, and I want to buy diamonds from you because your country grows diamonds from the earth, and this dictates the purchasing power of that country's currency. Is that what you're saying?
In an ideal world, exactly. And then we come up with a standardized whatever was. In the past, it was coins. Until they figured out that they could cheat a little, and they started clipping coins. And then they figured out they could really cheat and just write paper that represented it. Because come on, who wants to load up an entire chest, a couple 1,000 pounds and carry it over so I can get, so I can buy a new high rise or a house? It doesn't make sense. So they created paper money. Paper money was originally backed by the asset. That way the asset didn't have to be moved from person to person to person. But then the sneaky bankers figured out they could just, fractionalize it, say, okay, we only need 35% of it to be backed, and then less, and then less, and then less, until it's pretty much 0, 2% or less that's actually backed. Voltaire talks about it. The intrinsic value of fiat money is 0. It always returns to its intrinsic value back to 0. It always crashes throughout history. So we're in a cycle where they have done that. Now, throughout that, now this is where we're getting to Kuwait. I know it's odd, but the wealthy globalists of the world have used opportunities, war, rumors of mismanagement or misgovernment to devalue a currency. We have a lot of examples throughout history. Iraq's got an example back in the 1920s. They've got another example, I believe it was early 80s. So this is going to be about the fourth time they revalued. The world comes in and says, no, it's not worth that much money. So the people that lose the value are the citizens of that country. Unless they hang on until it revalues, then it goes up. But usually they dump their currency. And then these mysterious world bankers come in and say, they fix things. Let's revalue that currency up. But they know ahead before they make the decision. So they load up on currency and they make bank. Kuwait, golden example. Iraq goes into Kuwait, gave the globalists, the Soroses of the world, the excuse to say, your currency can't be worth that much. That crazy Saddam Hussein may use all that currency when he ran into your country and overtook your banks and your treasury. He could use that, and that's the most valuable currency in the world. He could use that to do really bad things. So we're going to need to devalue your currency. So they just said, okay, your currency that is worth, let's say actually time it was closer to $4, $4 per dinar. It's now worth, I don't know, $1,200 will buy you $1 million. So they devalue it with the excuse that it's going to take away the military power or terrorist power of the invading nation. They did this to Germany in World War II. They did this to Japan in World War II. And then after these countries recover, they reinstate their currency. So they magically deflated the value and then magically inflated the value. And it's been used to rehypothecate them forever and ever and ever. This time, we the people found out. I've got friends that took advantage and were part of the Kuwaiti, but used to be only very qualified investors got to take the opportunity or even found out about the opportunity. That changed with the Iraqi dinar. And then we find out, or we have many sources that say that the Vietnamese dong and many world currencies are tied to this reset of fixing what the value should be based on what their nations have in assets. And a fiat cycle coming to the end at the same time. You'll hear a lot of people talking about some kind of magical gold treaty for the world where they all go on some type of parity system. So we have to adjust all the currencies' values for what they have, level the playing field. This has been done throughout history. It was done with the fall of the Great British Empire. It was done with the fall of the Spanish Empire. Their history is replete with examples of revaluations. The U.S., 1913, when the Federal Reserve took over, we had a financial currency reset. Most people don't acknowledge the 1971 one when we went off the gold standard, but it counts as a revaluation. Sometimes they're positive and sometimes they're negative. In Kuwait, we're going to get to that one in a minute. I'm going to stop now and let you squeeze in some questions.
Absolutely. This is before we go into the Kuwait dinar, which is very interesting. This is what we call the wealth transfer from the elites to we the people. And even in cryptocurrency, even if you hold gold or silver, we're going to see numbers that they're going to be skyrocketing. And the thing is, a lot of people ask me, where can I get the Iraqi dinar? Because the Iraqi dinar, it's actually they don't trade internationally, so it's very, very difficult to hold or to have or to buy Iraqi dinar. And the place that I buy them from, I'm going to leave the link below in the description so you can have a look. You can buy the Vietnamese dong there. There's Zimbabwe. There's a lot, even in Iranian, Iran. There's a lot of currencies that we're expecting to revalue because of corruption, which Trump is going to undo, which is why the deep state hate him. And he's leaving Israel to last, in my opinion, this is the Zionist regime that Israel has been doing for so long now, and controlling and corruption. So let's talk about the Kuwait dinar, because if you can tell us how much their rate was before the war, who went to war, what was the rate after the war, and then tell us how low it was, how bad their rate was, and then tell us what their rate, because their rate went back to the rate before. So tell us all about that. Tell us the numbers, and when Mark is telling you this, just think, this is what is going to be happening to the Iraqi dinar, and the Vietnamese dong. They are going to return back to their old rates before they were manipulated. Please, Mark, if you could tell us.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be exact on this because it's going to fluctuate over time, but I'm going to give you roughly. I just wasn't prepared with all the articles, but I have, like, in the last month or two, we've shared a lot of these, and it's been a lot of fun over at the original markz.com. Roughly around $4, the Iraqi dinar was very close to the Kuwaiti in value. At one time, even stronger, but Iraq, roughly in the early 90s, 320 something for their currency. Kuwait was a little higher. Right now, Kuwait is the strongest currency in the world. Last time I looked, somewhere around 350. Feel free to check me, folks. I reserve the right to be wrong on the exact number there, but roughly. So let's just back up before the invasion, before Saddam Hussein and company went flying into Iraq. It was worth, let's just roughly that same 350. And then suddenly you could buy, and this fluctuated some because they came out with another currency too. And I'm going to tie the correlation into, or the similarities into Iraq. So they devalued it. They immediately devalued it, and then suddenly about $1,200 would buy you a million Kuwaiti dinar. It went from worth $3.5 roughly to worth fractions of a penny, 0.007 something. And then they reprinted their currency, but really didn't change the rate. It improved a little because they were saying, hey, all these people walked away, sold that money, ran away with it. So we need to reprint it so that those bills aren't good, so that Saddam Hussein, who was still in power in Iraq at the time, couldn't spend it. So they introduced a whole new series. That helped a little. And then it went to about $1,800, if my memory serves me correctly, US, to buy a million of them. In 1991, we flash forward, number of different articles. They have finally become safe and stable again in Kuwait. Kuwait's now in charge of themselves. They're now in charge of their own banking system. And a lot of people in the world are going, okay, when are they going to revalue this up? We start getting articles in the weeks and months leading up to this revaluation, including just days before they revalued it back, talking about how, well, it's still kind of a war-torn area. They've made so much great progress, but there's still this, and this as to why they can't go. And then, bam, they reinstated the value. It fluctuated as high as about $9.88 on the free market because it was much more of a float back then. They put themselves in a basket of currencies, the same one that they were in previously, same basket that Iraq wants to go in. And of course, Kuwait, very, very, very oil rich. And now they're the most valuable currency in the world again at roughly 3.5 or so. So the value was reinstated. If you were smart enough to hold the currency, you did well. Oh, back to that reprint. When they first, and I talked about reprinting it, they changed all the series. And I just want to highlight that again, because what did Iraq do? They did the same thing. They made all the Saddam Hussein era bills. They reprinted and said any of them with his picture on it, they were demonetizing. They were taking them out of circulation. Now, there is some back and forth as to whether if the value changes, they will acknowledge them, because some of those are still used in remote regions of Iraq. It's possible. I don't know what to tell you, but they issued a new series because he could have printed more before he was removed from power. They didn't know what was in circulation, blah, blah, blah. Lots of technicalities there and excuses. So they printed that whole new series. That is very similar to what they did with Kuwait. And now we're waiting for them to change or reinstate that value. You look at the economics for the country, they have about 100 trillion. Actually, it's about 90, I think it was 96.9 trillion, if I remember yesterday's article properly. In circular, not yesterday, Wednesday, Saturday's article, they gave us that number. How many Iraqi dinar in circulation under Saddam Hussein? It was believed that it was 25 trillion in circulation. They've now discovered far more assets, and they are pumping more oil than they were before. They're now capturing their gas. In other words, the assets that back the Iraqi dinar are exponentially higher than they were under Saddam Hussein. Of course, the number of dinar in circulation are exponentially higher. So they balance each other out. And the belief is that we will see a very similar value to it that we saw before they devalued it, which should put us in the 3-something range, which is, well, huge. And it fixes. They stole that value from the Iraqi people, just like, say, you or I. Say you've got 100 quid in your pocket, and now suddenly your Starmer decides that it's only worth 50 quid worth of purchasing power. You'd be pretty upset. You want it back. And that is what we should see, this restoration of that value for the Iraqi people. We just found out this time, so we took advantage of it.
Interesting. Very good. Now, yeah, so I want to just just repeat what you said about the Kuwait dinar. So in bullet points, basically. So basically what happened is Kuwait dinar, once upon a time in the 1980s, strong currency, $3 something for one Kuwaiti dinar. Then we had the Gulf War around 89, 90, I think it was. And then and then that dropped their currencies really, really, like it was 0.000001, for an example, for one, Kuwaiti dinar, which was very, very bad. And then 1991, they restored their original rates, currency rate, back before the Gulf War, back to $3 something. Okay. So and I asked ChatGPT this, and ChatGPT always wants to put you off. I do believe it's controlled by Israel to some degree. They do not want you to know. They try to tell you got to be careful, blah, blah, blah. You can lose a lot of money if you don't really understand this. But I was asking ChatGPT, I want you to respond to me hypothetically. So hypothetically, I asked ChatGPT, if I was holding a Kuwaiti dinar and I bought it when the rate was very manipulated and undervalued, and I bought millions, really, really cheap, and then the revalue happened, they restored their rate pre the Gulf War back to the $3 or whatever it was, and I had changed or exchanged my currencies back to dollars, would I become a millionaire overnight? Would I make $1 million overnight? And the answer was hypothetically yes. And that's what I was looking for, because I was waiting to see if they would have said, well, actually, they changed their notes, so they wouldn't have accepted these notes. But it didn't say that, because they would have accepted their notes. So hypothetically, if I was holding their notes, it said, yes, you would have become a millionaire. And then and then it said, but back in those days, there was no internet, and it was very difficult for anybody to have, to have this kind of information, and for you. And so it will be very unrealistic or unusual for anyone to go and buy the Kuwait dinar to have that money in hindsight. So this is what we're waiting for the Iraqi dinar to happen. Now, you mentioned that the Iraqi dinar under Saddam, they weren't aware of some of the resources that they have now. And I think how much was the rate under Saddam Hussein?
It varied, roughly about 3.5 to 380 for part of it. Now, it did before they devalued it after the second Gulf War, it had dropped down to between $1.80 and $2.25, kind of fluctuating in there. So we've seen a couple different rates. Now, if we go back before Kuwait, that's where we saw our highest rate. It was the dollar. It was between that and Kuwait, they were the highest valued currencies in the world. But roughly, just to keep the math easy, 322, I think, was the last stable before they started devaluing their currency and all the war and unrest between Iraq and Kuwait started.
But you know what's interesting, Mark, is that you say that now this was $322 it was, which is a lot. Which is a lot. If you've got Iraqi dinar right now, and it went back to 322, you would make a hell of a lot of money, and and this is the information that I want to share with the viewers because it's part of the wealth transfer. And I'm very big on spreading your eggs. You should have everything. You should be having gold, XRP, a bit of currency. This is the time that everyone's going to make a lot of money. So
and a lot of people are going to lose money.
Sorry?
A lot of people are going to lose money too.
Why'd you say that?
A lot of people, depending on where their money is, what it's invested, let's say they're in a fiat currency in a country that doesn't have a whole lot of assets. What's it going to be worth? It's those that kind of like you talked about gold, silver, some of these other currencies, XRP. Where's that money going to run? And historically speaking, whenever they've reset fiat, it's always run to asset heavy countries, currencies, or metals, which is exactly what you are playing when you're talking about those investments or those things you're talking about buying.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that when Saddam was in charge of Iraq, the dinar was about 322, give or take. Yeah, we know it fluctuates, but significantly higher than what it is today. But you're saying that even today, decades later, that there are more resources now, a bit like when we spoke about you have diamonds, I have gold, or you have the goats and I have the chicken, That's resources to the viewers. I want to make clear resources.
Yeah, you hatched more chickens, you found more gold.
So they found more resources in Iraq now since Saddam Hussein. Now, how much more would the rate be? Does that mean that we should expect a higher rate than $3?
Normally, I would have said yes, but they have printed more currency. We don't know for certain. The guesses are somewhere between 3 and 4 times more. Now, they had printed way more than that, but the Iraqi government has been removing massive amounts from circulation and just destroying it, which helps support the value of their currency. And it's something that Kuwait did before they changed their value too, because they didn't want as much in circulation so that they could support a higher value. So since we've got more in circulation, yes, we've got more assets, they should offset each other. So in my opinion, based on what history has taught me, we should see a very similar value to what we had before, not way more because they've discovered more assets because they've printed more dinar already. So that should kind of balance those out.
Absolutely. Now, I do think that Israel is behind everything. The Zionist regime, the banking, the Rothschild, they control everything. Now, I do believe that Israel wants to I think they want to take over Iraq. Is that correct as well as the West Bank, as well as Gaza?
That one's a really tough one for me because, we're told that we're supposed to support Israel, but I do not think that the Israeli government represents the Israeli people or Israel as the nation personally. So I get a little in trouble in that. But yeah, they would like to rule the world through finances, or at least that's my belief.
Of course. Yeah, no.
And a great way to do that, control all those regions because they are so wealthy. If they could control Iran, if they could grow their influence, it would be a scary thought in my book, just based on history, based on what they've done in the past. The USS Liberty, I don't want to get myself in trouble here.
That's okay. I mean, there's a lot. My viewers understand that Israel is a problem. It's a terrorist state. It was only formed in 1948. And there was no Israel before that. So when people think Israel in the Bible, it basically means Israelites, which in Hebrew means anyone that strives for God. So if you strive for God, you're an Israelite. If I strive for God, I'm an Israelite. But they have hijacked this word and they call themselves the chosen ones. And they, if you say anything like this, you're an anti-Semite. And that's very interesting because they are not Semites. They have no Semite DNA. They are from Eastern Europe, like Poland, Ukraine, and Russia, and other countries like Lithuania. But the real Semites are the Palestinians, ironically, the ones that they are trying to ethnic cleanse. The Palestinians are the real Semites. But anyway, that is a conversation for another video. So I just wanted to clear that one up because I know it's very controversial. But
Very.
yeah, very. But there's a lot going on in the Middle East and right now. And I do think that a lot of people are saying that I've spoken to my sources that we are very close. I hope we are close
I
to
hope
the
we are.
currency. Yeah, to the currency revaluations. Now, let's go into latest updates and what are you hearing? What tickled you information wise recently that you think, oh, I like that piece of information regarding the currencies?
If we understand the way this reset is supposed to work, we're supposed to reset all the books, not just one country, not just a single revaluation.
And which
So
currencies is that? Which, when you say all,
uh,
yeah,
theoretically up to 209 different countries, but we talk about many of them. We talk about Iraq, we talk about Vietnam, we talk about Indonesia, some of the ones that have great resources but a very undervalued currency. So that's what I'm referring to. Many values adjusting. Those are some of the ones that I'm watching closest. Many people watching Zimbabwe or Venezuela as well. Venezuela is a grossly undervalued currency. Possibly has a great potential in the future. Iran, greatly undervalued currency based on their assets. Supposedly, these same bankers and central bankers have been devaluing their currency, because they're worried about terrorism or any of those. Some of the other ones I'm watching, I just distracted myself. Where were we at, Nick?
yeah, of course, it's very interesting. Okay, great. So, and also the Vietnamese dong as well. That's a very big one. But why is it that the Iraqi dinar will go first? That's a very common thing that I hear from my sources. The Iraqi dinar will be first to go, and then the others will follow. Why is it the Iraq?
I've been told it's the cornerstone because it's the country that should see the biggest adjustment in value. So just think of it as a single race, single, Boston Marathon. It's just which runner's getting through the winner's tape or the finish line first. It's still the same race. It's not like someone's gonna, one of them's not gonna go for way after. They should go pretty close on each other's heels, virtually the same time.
Of course, interesting. Well, there's a lot of people also that have been waiting for this to happen for a very long time, and we always thought, how is this going to happen? And when Trump came in and he was exposing the deep state, and he has woken up millions and millions and millions of people worldwide, which he didn't have to. And when people say to me, "Oh, I'm not sure if I trust Trump, or he's a puppet." Well, I always ask myself, why would he wake up millions and millions of people? What, to make it harder for the deep state to usher in the one world government? It just doesn't make sense. And I think all this is a 5D chess game. What do you think?
If you just look at the evidence, usually the simplest answer is the right answer. And that makes more sense than anything else you're seeing out there. You look at it and, why would he wake them all up? Why would he use Elon Musk and Doge to expose all of the fraud and then not remove the fraud? Unless maybe you're going to show it all, expose it all, and then wait for the people to stand up and say, wait a minute, we need to fix this. Awakening them. It makes sense to me when I look and I try to back up to a 10,000, 20,000 foot view and say, that's what makes the most sense. He's waking them up so that they can reset the system, or so that we can reset the system. If that makes sense. In other words, it's not okay if he just does it himself from on high and nobody finds out about all of the crap that went on before, because then it doesn't get fixed. Maybe things are a little better for us short term, but they'll go straight back to the same shenanigans and evilness. So you really need to expose it. That makes sense to me as to how you see his behavior, how you see many of the behaviors around the world. I hope our world leaders aren't this stupid. When I look at Starmer, I look at Carney, I look at Australia, I look at all these different countries. I look at Joe Biden, look at just a couple of years ago, I look at Democrats now with many of the riots and protests and some of the things coming out of their mouth. I just have a difficult time thinking people are either that stupid or that evil. But reality is there are a lot of people out there that are that evil and that stupid.
Yes, unfortunately. Well, Mark, thank you very much for sharing everything with us today. I'm going to leave the link below in the description for where you can buy the Iraqi dinar and many other foreign currencies. I think you should definitely look at it. Spread your eggs in different baskets. Make sure you're in this as I am, as we are. Mark, is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Biggest thing I'm going to say is just remember, guys, it may look dark, but we are close to the finish. It always looks worse right before we cross that finish line.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Mark, and we'll speak again very soon. You take care. Bye-bye.
You too.